Rise and Shine on Australia's Vision Christian Radio.
You're on Rise and Shine with Fel and Matt all across Australia. And joining us on the line is one of my old school buddies from Coffs Harbour, Luke Barnes. He's now working as an astrophysicist in Sydney. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to catch up. Now, I heard that you were speaking recently alongside John Dixon, who's a very well-known Christian speaker. And I said to Fel, we've got to get my mate Luke on the radio to hear a bit of his story. So tell us, what do you do these days?
So these days, one of the things I like to do is the sort of events that John Dixon put on, where I'm a Christian, I'm an astrophysicist, and I get a chance to stand in front of an audience and say basically that I'm a Christian, I'm an astrophysicist, and I enjoy looking at God's universe.
That is incredible, and something that my husband, who'll be listening along, is actually this will be blowing his mind. He's like, This is amazing. So for those listening along, and they might think astrophysicist, that's a massive job. That's up there with me, like brain science, I think. Luke, can you tell us a bit about what your role is and what it is you do?
So I have a sort of standard academic position, which means what I do is about half research. So one of the things I research is how galaxies form. I'm a theory sort of person, simulator, computers, equations, all that sort of side of things. So that's half of what I do. The other half is teaching. So I teach physics and astrophysics to students here at Western Sydney.
Amazing. And can you tell us a bit? I'm always fascinated at how creation, but particularly the universe, and when you look at how galaxies are formed, actually points us to God. Can you tell us a bit about what you've found and how it's related to your faith?
One of the focuses of my research is called the fine-tuning of the universe for life. So I've written a book on this with a colleague of mine, Geraint Lewis, called A Fortunate Universe. The idea is there anything interesting or remarkable or unique about the way that our universe is set up from the sort of the bottom up, from the right down at the bottom of the deepest laws we know about? And the answer seems to be yes. If those laws, if those numbers that underneath the universe were much different, the universe wouldn't support the kind of life that we are, and even any sort of life that we can imagine. So there seems to be this deep connection between the way our universe is at its very base and the sort of things that life like us needs.
Fantastic, mate. And I'm curious, in your field, I'm sure there are many non-Christians who would challenge your Christian faith. Do you cop a lot of flack being a Christian in your field?
Well, not particularly, I'll be honest, because there are also a lot of Christians in my field as well. So at this event with John Dixon for the Undeceptions podcast, a fellow astrophysicist of Sarah Sweet was also there. She's a Christian and an astrophysicist. Her PhD supervisor also works in astrophysics in Australia. He's also a Christian. There's, it's just not that rare for a Christian to be in science. Certainly not as rare as some people would like you to believe. So, no, not really copped anything. And the book I wrote, I just mentioned, my co-author is an atheist. So we wrote it together to show that, we can agree on a lot of the science, but it's the interpretation beyond that where it makes a difference.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit, because obviously your area of expertise is how galaxies form. That's of interest to me. What is it possible for us to understand, or do you need to have a science degree to be able to understand the mechanics behind that, or what you've found?
Well, what we have is there are some great simulations on computers of how it works. It's quite a complicated process. But we think we know the pieces, and then how the parts of the story, so to speak, and then you try and get a supercomputer to work it out. But the short story is, because gravity, the thing that's holding you on the Earth right now, because it pulls things together, if there's any part of the universe which is a bit denser than average, than the stuff around it, it will become even more dense. It'll pull more things in. So, for example, as the Earth goes through the solar system, if there's any sort of stray chunks of rock lying around our orbit, they'll end up falling onto the Earth, and the Earth will get that little bit heavier. That sort of process, but writ large out in space and over much longer timescales, is how galaxies grow. then there's other processes about how they form stars and how they come to be disks and all that sort of stuff. But that's the rough story.
And, I was so impressed to hear that John Dixon had you as a guest speaker alongside him and some other, incredible Christians. You mentioned before John has the Undeceptions podcast. It's actually an incredible podcast that's reaching people all over the world. Tell us about how you got connected with John.
Well, there's been a few sort of connections along the way, but one of them was when John was a lecturer at Sydney University when I was there as a researcher. This was probably about 10 years ago. John was teaching a course on the New Testament. And I thought, oh, that's great. I mean, when you work at a university, you can just sort of turn up to courses if you like and sit in without actually doing them. So I sat in there and asked way too many questions, and that's how I got to know John initially. And as time went on, I sort of became one of his phone of friends. He calls me for his podcast. So if he's got an astronomy thing that he needs someone to quickly explain to him, I get a phone call.
Oh, fantastic. And, he's now based in the US at one of the, well-known Christian colleges over there. And, a lot of people may have heard of him not only through his Undeceptions podcast, but he was also in a Christian band when I was growing up called In the Silence. And I remember seeing him at the Black Stump Music Festival. And so he's been around. He was a Christian singer, used to host a Christian TV show. He's authored books, and now he's, at a very prestigious college in the US. Great to see an Aussie bloke who's reaching the world with the gospel, hey?
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, his expertise is he has a PhD in ancient history as well as all the other stuff he's done. So he's a busy lad. But this Undeception podcast is amazing. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend that to listeners.
Fantastic, mate. And just before we go to, I'd love to know, is there any particular scriptures that you use when you're speaking in a Christian context? Is there any, Psalms or, anything from Genesis? What do you use to kind of complement the message you bring when you speak on these subjects?
Well, one of my favourites recently, I'm borrowing this actually from another Christian physicist, Mike Strauss. In Psalm 104, 21 says, "The lions roar for their prey and seek their food from God." And it sounds like such a small thing, but who feeds the lions? Well, on a scientific level, lions eat, antelope or whatever it is out there. But behind the scenes, they seek their food from God. So that both of those things are true. The psalmist, knew about the way the world is interconnected, right? He obviously doesn't think that the lions, get a steak magicked up by God every time they're hungry. But still behind the scenes of nature, this is God's nature. The whole of the ecosystem is his. So you can say lions roar for their prey, and you can also say lions seek their food from God. Both things are true. I find that to be a sort of useful way of showing that the sort of picture we have of God is as creator, but as setting up this beautiful interconnected world that science can discover.
Well, Luke, it's so encouraging having a chat to you. And I'm encouraged as a mum with kids who are looking for their future careers to know that science is a great place for Christians to go, and there's a thriving community there. Luke, where can people go if they want to find out more? Perhaps your book and other things. Are you on socials? Is there a website they could head to?
Yeah, I was about to say I'm on Twitter, but I'm not sure if people should be on Twitter. It's a bit of a cesspool, to be perfectly honest. But the book is called A Fortunate Universe with Cambridge University Press. If people want to find that, they'll, they can Google me and find me on YouTube and stuff. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We've loved having a chat this morning.
A pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.